everyone. How is everyone doing today? Welcome to Transformation Time. This is a show we do every Thursday. We'll either do Transformation Time or Behind the Scenes. On this show, we'll have our guest speaker that is going to share their knowledge with you about their personal development journeys and the mindset shifts they've gone through. My name is Diana Lizarazo, and today's guest speaker is Aki. So let me just get her on. I can see she's here. Okay, perfect. Hey, Aki.
Hi, how are you, Diana? Good to
I,
see you.
I'm good. Yeah, great to see you too. So thanks for coming on. I think it's going to be fun to get to hear your personal development journey and your mindset shifts getting into real estate. So before we get started, let's just tell the viewers a little bit about you. What's your strategy? Like whatever you like to share, how long you've been in it, whatever you like to share about your real estate journey.
Absolutely. I guess I can really just say my journey started by lesson learned from mistakes, and I think those are probably the best way to get started. So I'm a lawyer by trade, graduated from law school very early on, over 12 years ago, and I had crazy amount of debt. And I struggled paying off those debt. We're talking six-figure debt. I was super young. I was in my early 20s. And I was there trying to figure out how to pay off a six-figure debt, when I was completely financially illiterate. So, and then learned everything about personal finance after making some mistakes and trusting people at the decision making table where I was not an informed participant. And so I just regained control over that entire process by becoming financially literate, financially knowledgeable, and placing myself at the table where decisions pertaining to my finance were being discussed so that I can be like an active participant and say, no, no, this is not what I want. No, you cannot take my 50K saving and pay off my car because that's only going to put up my credit score by 1 point. True story, which I had allowed before. So after that, I said the bank works for the bank and their best interest is for the bank. So I need to figure out where I fit in that picture and how I can start looking out for my best interest. So learn everything I could about personal finance, realized as well early on that real estate was going to be a key component. So paid off the six-figure debt. It was just an unnecessary back debt that was eating at my cash flow. So paid that off. Simultaneously started investing while I was doing that. So paid it off in 2.5 years. Started investing in real estate. Started small, just sort of a single family townhomes, but great location. I think something that I did early on that helped from the beginning is I'm really good and intentional at investing in locations that makes a lot of sense from an investor standpoint. So started that and then we just scaled, and we at that point after that got married, and we just scaled from there on, started buying land, and then after land converted into multifamily units. So we just started purchasing locally in Ottawa, out of province as well, and out of country. So a multitude of like multifamily units. And now we're working on a 504 unit
Oh,
portfolio.
wow.
And
That's huge.
that's the biggest in one in one serving, I could say, working
Exactly.
with a combination
And so
of
what would you
so
say, what got you actually like even thinking about real estate? Was it like family, friends? Like what even just got you thinking anything about real estate?
I think that's a really good question. When you start listening to podcasts, that's one. When you start being intentional about your wealth or financial journey, you get access to information. And a lot of that access to information is through podcasts and also books, right? The first, obviously, is the one everybody will speak of, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. that book, I picked it up and I never looked back. That completely changed things for me. And it became clear to me that, you know, although we have all these profession, I was not going to be poor dad. Okay. I was not going to be poor mommy. And I was going to be rich mommy, and I was going to be smart, and I was going to figure out how to now take the skills that I have through my profession and the pay that we make and convert that into passive income, and also using the skill sets that I have to scale up in real estate. So that completely shifted my mindset from the get-go.
That's an awesome actually way to bring it in, because my next question would be getting into real estate. What skills did you realize that you had that helped you propel yourself in real estate?
I would say, you know, with the profession that I have, like just a keen eye to detail helps a lot. And those are stuff, so a few things: keen eye to detail, ability to negotiate really well, and like, no, not feeling rushed. I don't feel the pressure of being.
That's, I think, always an issue with a lot of people. Oops, sorry, I think there's a bit of a delay there, but I was saying like that's usually an issue. It's a lot of people feel, I don't know why, because I'm the same as you actually. I've never been felt rushed or pushed into anything. I always had to feel or see that this is a good deal to get into it. So that's really good. I think that's a good thing to point out, because I think especially now that the economy's going in a downturn, I think that's even more important, because you want to make sure you're getting those really good deals.
Exactly. So it's like a fine line, you know. You don't want to feel rushed, but you want to be time sensitive to understanding the
Mm-hmm.
market and also act fast. So
Mm-hmm.
the non-feeling rush is really not feeling pressured, I would say. You know, you
Yeah.
learn how to get really comfortable in, even in a short period of time, assessing those things that really matters to you, so that you can make an informed decision, but you're also being time sensitive and making that decision where you're not missing out on a great opportunity because you're sitting on the sideline being too scared. So I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people could be too scared, or feel paralyzed, and they say, well, I'm just kind of not rushing myself. No, that's a fine line too.
Yeah,
You're just too scared to take action, be honest with you.
that's true too. Yeah, 100%. I think like the biggest one is the analysis paralysis, right? Where it's just like you're making excuses for why you're not getting in. You know, like all the like it's actually funny that it's something that I've been noticing now, before and now that we're going into the downturn, is that, for example, when things are going up, oh, I'm not going to invest right now because prices are too high and all this stuff. And then now it's like, oh, I'm not going to invest now because like the bottom's not there, and you know, I'm probably going to lose money in this. And I'm just like, I don't know if you're ever going to find a deal if it's never good when it's good, and it's never good when it's bad. You know, it's like, it's very different,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And you nailed it, because there's always going to be a reason why you should not start today.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, are you going to let that reason cripple you? Or are you going to find a solution to why you should still start today? You know,
Mm-hmm.
if it's, well, I don't want to start today because I don't know anything about investing, but I know it's a great market right now. Well, get coaching, right? And get informed so that you can start your journey. If it's a question of, oh my God, look at that. Look, like 2 years ago, it's now hindsight is always funny, right? It's always 2020. 2 years ago, the amount of excuses that I was hearing in terms of investing, and it was like valid, because any real excuse, there's always going to be something in the market that will make it valid. And it was like, look at the market, we're going through a pandemic. Nobody there was like, oh my God, look at those interest rate, I totally should be buying. Now,
Mm-hmm.
flip side to that, where we've been living with like 7 different increase in like a year, now people are like, oh my God, I cannot buy because of the interest rate. I'm like, well,
That's so true. Oh my God, it's so funny. Actually, I think like a few months ago, I had someone private message me oh, I can't invest right now because interest rates are so high. And for me, I find that funny because I'm actually excited that interest rates are high because how long is that going to last for? Like, let's say for extreme, I don't think it'll last, to be honest, more than, let's say, 3 years. Let's say
right.
if it's like certain time going, like, and then you buy on a discount now, and
Exactly.
if you're cash flowing now, and then you go for a refinance in, let's say, 3 to 5 years, for example, I'm like, you're laughing because now you're just like even more cash flowing, you know? So I just found that really funny because I actually got excited when interest rates were going up because obviously it's an inverse relation, right? Price of houses go up, interest rates go down. Prices of houses go down because the interest rates go up, right?
Absolutely.
So
And
I
I
actually
think
got
what
it. I'm
gets
actually
you
excited.
excited is knowledge. Knowledge gets you excited because when you are empowered with the knowledge, you
Mm-hmm.
do not get, you don't go with the wind of the news, right? You're like, okay, well, this means this, and I
Mm-hmm.
know that. So because you are knowledgeable in it, you're excited. So
Mm-hmm.
anybody who's listening to us, they're hearing that you're excited, they're probably like rolling their eyes at us right now. But
Yeah, I feel like crazy person. That's amazing. Any other skills that you wanted to talk about that you felt that were very useful getting into real estate?
I spoke about the negotiation piece, right? Negotiation was really key for me in the negotiating a lot of off-market deals. So, and it's weird to say, but we've never actually purchased the property at purchase price. It's always been negotiated down. I don't care if I'm negotiating down 10,000. I'm somehow just negotiating down something. Even when it was like a crazy, like crazy seller's market 2 years ago, still was able to negotiate. But that's because when you're able to add value in other ways,
Mm-hmm.
then you leverage your ability to negotiate, right? So keep the
100%.
conditions that are really just important. Make sure that you are able to close sooner. So when you have leverage in terms of value that you're providing, you can always negotiate. So the legal skills, I think, brought that, and just the keen eyes in stabilizing also the property. So after you close, the business aspect of like knowing how to treat it like a business, where you're focusing on stabilizing, you're focusing on now executing the plan that you had in mind when you were doing your pro forma, right? When you were analyzing the property and you had all this dreams and hopes of what this can be. Well, now it's time to actually put it into action. So
Mm-hmm.
that's also the part of not rushing yourself after you close, like really stabilizing the investment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really great points because it is very true that a lot of people think it's all about the money and it's like people care about the money, but it's really about helping the seller solve the problem. And you really start noticing those kind of things. Like you said, like you may not give them their asking price, but you may be actually giving them something much more important to them that they need, whatever it is that they need solved.
Exactly.
And so it's very interesting. I think like that. I think it's something you start learning, right? Like especially when you get the opportunities to actually talk to the sellers a lot more. I feel like you really start digging into, figuring out, getting to know who they are and what their actual needs are, and like that you realize, okay, it's not about the money, which is very important because we have to make sure the numbers work for us too to get it to work, right? But then obviously we're giving something to them too,
Yeah.
right? It's like, okay, they're getting something, but at least we also are able to run our numbers the way we need to make sure we're doing what we have to do.
Exactly. And you nailed it. Like, and it's understanding your seller in a way. Like, oftentimes, some people don't have access to the seller. That's something else. I do a lot of negotiation directly, even if there's, let's say, an agent involved. I always make a request at some point in time to speak with the seller. And if that's granted, I don't take that for granted, because there's some questions that I like to ask directly to a seller. And motivation to sell, understanding what is their motivation to sell, why is it that they're selling, that will give you so much leverage in even knowing what is it that you should be offering, you know? And if you know their motivation is, I need the money like yesterday because I'm going through this and I need money, well, that's not the seller that you go with and you start lowballing. Like, it doesn't work.
Exactly. Very good points. So what about now that you've been in real estate for a while, what are skills that you learned along the journey that you never thought that you would need or use, or, just getting into it?
I think when you go from the theory, the reading, to actually the practice, the first skill that you learn and that you need to get really good at is analyzing, is understanding the numbers, understanding what is it that they say to you, understanding how the numbers influence your goals, right? So you have goals as to why is it that you're doing this, and someone's goal can be completely different. For some people, it's cash flow, their goals. They need to increase their monthly cash flow. Some people, they want to buy and hold and ensure that in the long run they create some type of generational wealth. But some people, their goal is so cash flow driven that they cannot focus on the longevity of things. So understanding your goals will then help you when you start understanding how to analyze those numbers to really know what's a deal that works for you and what's a deal that doesn't work for you. And you need to be true to yourself in that analysis, but also open yourself with the possibility of maybe, okay, well, maybe my vision is a little too tunnel vision. Like, maybe cash flow is not just the only thing that I should focus on, because like, you can literally do a burr, and we're going to put a caveat of we're dealing in a different market, but you can do a burr and the property might not be cash flowing when you're closing, but in a year or less than a year, that property can put 40, 50, 50,000 in your pocket that you would not have had. So here you were so focused on that, like, I need that extra $200 per month, but that 200 times 12 is nothing near that 50K that you've made by just allowing yourself to know the numbers, knowing strategy, and employing the strategy that gets you quicker to your goal than what you think might get you there. Okay, better.
Yeah, 100%. It's a great point. Yeah, and it's very true, because there are so many strategies out there. So that is a great point, is really understanding what is important for you. And it is funny finding that fine line, because I feel like sometimes you want to get into like that blinders, like super focus and just look for what you need. But then other times I feel like you do want to also just like open your eyes and be like, okay, how is everything going? Like, or do I need to pivot, for example, like what is going on with the market, and just kind of make sure that is it time to pivot or time to move? Because like that, the economy is also changing. So strategies don't always work in the same environment.
Exactly. And like understanding this market, like right now we're dealing with Bill 23. We know that we're dealing with increase of interest rate, but we're also dealing with Bill 23. So what does that mean for us as investors? Okay, we know there's clearly going to be a push in 2023 to 2025 to increase our immigration by 1.5 million or so. Well, that means from an investor perspective, well, I'm in a position where I can provide solution to the problem, and the solution is housing. So you position yourself in that way by making sure that your strategy does provide that solution, right? So whether it is that you're creating, you are creating more, you're taking advantage of Bill 23 and converting some of like a R1 one unit into a triplex, that's creating 3 different sources of housing there for a household, right? For different family. Position yourself in a way that you understand the market that you're working in, and working with that market, not being like, oh my God, this is a crazy market. Let me just hold off and relive that. Oh my God, I should have done it 2 years, 5 years ago. Because you're always going to feel like that if you're on the sideline, not taking any action.
100%. Completely agree. Any other skills that you felt that you've had to learn along the way that were
Yeah.
something you can think of?
You know what I think is a big one? I don't know how you felt about that, but for me, the biggest challenge in this journey was being comfortable with OPM, like being comfortable with approaching OPM, being
Which is
comfortable
other
with
people's money for people who don't know.
yeah, other people's money, whether it's the bank, whether it's so with the bank, it was like converting because I was so stuck in early on of I will never get myself in crazy amount of debt. I will never put myself in that position. You know, I started this journey with that proper mindset. So now converting up, no, there is such thing as good debt. You know, there is such thing as leveraging the bank to create not just passive income, but really financial freedom and generational wealth. The same way they've been using you, frankly, to enrich themselves. It's time for you to become the bank. Like you can be a lender, you can, but utilizing that for you to grow, that was big of a shift.
And how was your shift with that? Like let's say specifically talking about OPM, how, yeah, how, like what were your thoughts behind it before, and then how has it changed?
For sure, thought behind when it comes to the bank was like, I will never trust them to do anything with them. Like, what do you mean? Like, I at this point I might just become Dave Ramsey's daughter. Like, I mean, I'm just like, let me break all the cards and yeah. So that was the mindset before, and then I was like, something is off here because clearly you need credit to be able to navigate in anything and everything, including like even renting things. Like you need credit. Like I just don't see how people are living without a credit card. And fine if they find ways, but it's just not for me to try to figure
There's
that
just
out.
no growth that way. Like
No.
you can get rents, you can do like basic things, but if you want to grow, you realize your credit report becomes very
Yeah.
important. Because it's very true. I know even I'd say my husband, before we met, he was a very cash person. So he had no credit. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, how do you plan to get a mortgage? You know?
Right.
A very basic thing. How do you get a car? I was like, how are you going to get anything? I don't get it.
And then the misconception of like, no, I don't have any problem. I don't have no credit. No credit isn't good credit. No credit
Yeah.
is no credit. You have no credit. You are as ineligible as a bad credit. Like you have no credit. I don't know how else to
And
explain
then
it.
it takes you time to gain that, because then you're starting from the bottom going up, and it's like that for me. I had a credit card in university or maybe even high school. Like I started very early and was just like learning, okay, learning to like use a credit card, pay it off each month, and getting used to that process because I don't know. For me, it was ingrained. They're like, you got to work on your credit. I'm like, yes, man. Whatever you want, right? Not that I knew any better. It's just your parents tell you something, and you're like, whatever you say,
I'll do
right?
it. But the fact that you knew that you should pay it off every month would already put you ahead of like so many people in Canada, right? Like from an early on. And that really helps you build your credit in a way that people in their 20s and 30s and 40s are like just discovering, oh, I should have done
Yeah.
that, right? Because
Hmm.
people use
Yeah,
the
it's
credit
very
card
interesting.
as an emergency fund and it's not your emergency fund. So that's the other
Yeah.
side of the coin, right? Some people just, we're not here like advocating for, okay, have a credit card, not be a good steward with it. Like there's always a balance to everything.
Hmm. And like you were saying, right? Financial literacy is so important. And like I was personally lucky that my parents ingrained that, specifically my dad, like drilled it into my head. But it is true because I remember, for example, university, specifically international people that came had never had a credit card. They get offered a credit card And, you know, for that, I remember one specifically telling me that, you know, she saw like, oh, like free money, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Didn't really understand how the process worked. So she'd do like minimum payments and didn't really care what happened. And then, you know, it just starts going up until she actually started, and she's an engineer, you know, like you always think that people in certain education should know, but it's just like she had just never used a credit card in her life. Like this was not normal back in her country. And so it wasn't until she's just like, oh yeah, I get 500, awesome, you know. And then she's like, yeah, do pay the minimums. And then all of a sudden she starts realizing that, you know, her amount is just getting more and more and more. And as a student, even $500, $1,000, I don't remember what, but
Yeah.
like money still matters, right? Because you're like, it's not like you have lots of money to spend. So even like seeing that accumulate.
Yeah. And you
Um,
know, it's almost like it's so hard in North America to conceptualize and understand this, but there are parts of the world, and there definitely was 20 years ago,
mhm.
where this concept of a credit card is completely foreign. People
Yeah,
spend what they have, and I come from part of that world where you spend what you have. You buy a house with what you have. Like there's no that concept of like getting credit, you know, was so foreign. And what happens is you come here, there's no education that comes with a credit card. There's no resource that was at your fingertip, right? That explains to you, hey, you international student, and thank God, like, and they pay even more. Their tuition is already crazy, so now they're getting
exactly.
this free money, right? They don't have to worry about, oh, okay, free money. And no one is telling them that minimum payment, that's not what you should be making, because that you're just paying the interest. You're not paying down your principal. You're not
Mhm.
really doing anything. It's so, and the reason why that information isn't available to people, finance is discussed at home, and it is so that we can continue as a society to create consumers, because that's how you create a culture of debt. It's a very lucrative business to create uninformed, you know, illiterate people who continue consuming and not know how to break themselves from that cycle and utilize that in a positive way to help them grow. It's lucrative to keep it
Mhm.
that way.
Yeah, 100%. Also, now I'm getting your understanding on the banks, because for me it was, I would say when it came to OPM in the sense of banks, I never really had problems with going to banks for money. But my problem was actually, which I found very weird afterwards, actually, but was like going to people for
Mhm.
money. You know, I found that that was, you know, if you ask someone like, hey, you want to partner up with me on a deal or something, I don't know why that seemed like the scariest thing in the world for me. Was that for you? Did you have difficulties in asking the actual people, like to do partnerships or asking for money or whichever, in whatever way?
Yeah, I think that's probably the hardest, and I agree with you. Um, I think it's the hardest, and it took me forever. It's only when you started structuring like bigger deals, like for the longest time, just like purchase everything on my own, on our own, just did our own thing. And it's like, but you're not leveraging OPM. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Like, I'm not trying to do that. Like, keep that here. I get it. I know it, but man, keep this on the side. But you know, I had to challenge myself and be like, why? Why
Hmm.
are you not comfortable with this? What is it about? I'm like, well, it's different. It's weird. Like, you know, like why? It's almost like you're begging. Like, why are you begging? And then I'm just like, no, it's none of those things, because it's not like you can't or something. It's just smart. When you start working smarter, it makes more sense. But what tipped it for me and made it possible was when I could create a win-win situation.
Hmm.
So I started saying, okay, what is the problem? This is where the legal comes back in, right? Where it's like, okay, what is the problem that I'm trying to solve here? The problem that I'm trying to solve is growing and leveraging, right? And another problem that I'm trying to solve is helping people who are not in a position to do this on their own to start building wealth as well.
Hmm.
So now that became a lot more palpable for me, because then I realized that and then you go back to like, you know, one can chase 1,000, two can put like 10,000 to fleet. What? That's exactly the same concept, in the sense that when two heads comes together, two resources comes together, you are able to now help somebody else, and they're able to help. You guys are now able to put your heads together, put your resources together, and grow at a rate that is much higher than if you were trying to just do it on your own in your separate way. So when that became palpable to me, it became easier, because in every situation that involved, let's say, a joint venture, I'm always thinking about what is the win-win here. What is the win-win? How can I create the win-win where it's not just me who feel like I'm winning, but I also see the other person winning. And because I do coaching, I have access to understanding people's goals better. And because I understand the goals better, then I can, try to create a win situation for them that makes sense, and they can grow and all of that. So then it just became better for me, and I started seeing it as something that creates more impact. And I think people can create more impact with Bill 23. You're going to have now this requirement where people, new immigrants are not going to be able to, not Bill 23, but where new immigrants are not going to be able to purchase for 2 years, right? When they arrive here. Well, some people want to be able to purchase. They want to be able to do things on their own. So it creates more of a joint venture opportunity for them as well, to be able to leverage in that way. So as long as you can create and provide value and create a win-win situation, you can justify OPM, I think.
And I think that's where even you get the confidence to be able to bring in a deal to someone, right? It's actually like, I have this amazing deal and I want to share the wealth. Because I remember specifically what was my turning point was someone was just like, why would you give the bank interest when you can give it to a friend or family member? And I was just like, oh my God, that was my, like, of course. I was like, I'd rather give, already you feel like you have this, like, this hatred towards banks, and you're just like, even better way, I can just give it to someone else who has the money, and they get, like that, like you said, get win-wins in so many different ways, right? But that was like my turning point.
I absolutely love that. I love that.
Yeah, that was my turning point, where I was just like, okay, that's what gave me the confidence. That, and obviously like that, like as I was saying, like that deal, right? Getting that, if you have a deal where you believe in, you trust in, and you're just like, wow, like who wouldn't want this deal? It just gives you the confidence to like sell it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
Any other types of mindset shifts that you've gone through in your path through real estate?
And this mindset shift, I think it's real estate, but it's also just financial literacy overall. And that one is being comfortable not seeing a large sum of money sitting in your bank account.
That's a good one.
I think when
I'm just thinking of me. My planning used to be like literally, I had a year's worth of like expenses to make sure, like I was like way beyond like conservative. Like I wasn't like the 3 months, 6 months. No, I was like, I need a year's worth. And I was like, who's gonna be fired for a year? I don't know, just in case. Like
yeah, it's true. And it's like when you go from like scarcity, or when you go from like, oh my God, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and now you start being better and you start putting money aside, you start having an emergency fund, you start getting really comfortable at looking at your bank account and seeing large numbers, and you're like, all right, good. It becomes comfortable. It becomes a comfort zone. It becomes good for you, right? And I think you need to shift your mindset at that point from being a saver to an investor. You shouldn't do a spender to a saver. I say go from a spender to an investor. That's the shift that you have to do. And when you start being you need to be uncomfortable, especially in this market. Start
Mm-hmm.
like crazy amount of money sitting in your savings account, earning 0.1, or I don't even know what percent like these days it earns, when we are dealing with an inflation of 7%, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying don't have an emergency fund. Have an emergency fund. Build up to like 3 months at this point. You know, I used to say 3 to 6 months, but at this point I'm like, build up 3 months worth of your expense, put it in a high interest savings account, not a regular one. And the rest, invest whether you are being the bank by being a lender, invest whether you are putting it in deals in real estate, invest whether you are putting it in the market. Personally, I do a combination of all of it, because I don't get myself in this argument of people of like, oh, market versus real estate or this. I'm like, no, the whole point is you're diversifying your income. Learn how to diversify your investment. Learn how to create different legs for your investment as well. I don't put all my eggs in one basket. I diversify, and you can do that in a way where you understand, well, I know that real estate, I can do a lot more with a smaller amount of money, and it can make so much more for me with real estate. Well, I put more. It's a bigger percentage of my investment pie, right? It's a good like 50% of our investment pie. Well, but then there's still also, I like putting money in the market because I understand compound interest and how it works, and how, you know, larger amount that accumulates, small amount accumulates to large amount. You're paying yourself first. I do this challenge of like 1,000 shares per year. And the reason why I do that is just like, get yourself comfortable, even understanding things. While people are panicking, everything's in the red, I'm just buying left and right, because for me, it's just like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, Boxing Day type of feeling, right? So just buying. And then don't just stop there, understanding that the bank, their number one money maker isn't by giving you guys credit card, giving us line of credits and all that, but it's by, you know, creating mortgages and being mortgage lenders. Well, then you become the bank and learn how to start giving your money, like lending your money with an interest on it, and start now beating inflation. So you see, by just diversifying your investment in those three ways, you're not sitting here like stressed about that 7%. Am I stressed? Like I'm kind of stressed because it's annoying, but I'm not stressed because I feel like my financial future is not secured. That's not
Mm-hmm.
the level of stress that I'm in.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great point. And I just wanted to go back to actually, because it reminded me of actually something that happened this morning when you're talking about, like, basically, it's good to feel uncomfortable. And it's funny that you say that because literally, I had my golf lesson this morning and I was like, oh, I feel so weird. Like, my hips aren't turning. And I was like, the turn, like, it was getting awkward. I'm like, I feel awkward and it's not like, and he's like, it looks good. He's like, being uncomfortable is what you want to feel when you're learning something new. Like in my case, a new stroke, I was just practicing a new stroke and it just
Right.
kind of like really hit home because it like that made me think of real estate because we always talk about being uncomfortable and like that as you're even changing environments, you know, like now the economy is changing. We're all feeling uncomfortable because it's now learning the new environment and it's a good sign because now like it's funny he like made me realize like being uncomfortable means that things are good because you're in that process of changing and adapting
Mm-hmm.
to the new thing and it's like he's like and he told me he's like if you feel comfortable you know you're doing it wrong and
Exactly.
I'm like that's because I'm getting back to my regular habits where it's like I'm changing my swing and so obviously it's going to feel weird and it's the exact same thing in real estate right in real estate is the exact same like for either new investor it's everything's going to feel
Yeah.
awkward getting into new environments where economies change and they're not always exactly the same. Even us, I feel like as experienced investors, we will still have that awkwardness, probably not as badly as let's say a new investor, but we do feel that uncomfortableness because it's like adapting to this new environment and trying to understand what it is that we want to do.
Absolutely. Because when you're uncomfortable, that's when you grow the most,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it's like if we just keep it to like the most basic level of things, right? Like a baby from crawling to walking, like they're uncomfortable. That first walk, like that stage of trying to walk is extremely uncomfortable. That stage of like growing pain, you know, when your muscles are stretching is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
As you're doing that swing, learning something new, it's uncomfortable because you're learning something new. You're allowing yourself to grow. And if
Mm-hmm.
you are sitting in a place, including if you're just, let's say you were a flipper and you're looking at this market, you're like, oh my God, I've been a flipper for the past 5 years. Now what? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And well, now you're going to have to learn how to use another method, right? You might learn how to maybe keep a property, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how to maybe like multifamily it. It's going to be uncomfortable because you're no longer going to be the expert in that subject.
Mm-hmm.
You got to allow yourself to sit down and be a student. That's uncomfortable. But
Mm-hmm.
that's when you grow the most, when you allow yourself to be in a space where you're uncomfortable and you absorb and you allow yourself to learn, you will grow inevitably.
Mm-hmm.
So I welcome being uncomfortable. I welcome being in rooms where I'm not the smartest person. You know, I'm just sitting there and just like absorbing. I'm like, this is so great. But that's where I grow the most.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I completely agree. I love that saying of being the dumbest person in the room. I actually love that. It's so true because you sit there and all you're just like absorbing all this information. I'm like, wow, you guys have so much knowledge, you know?
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that. Any other types of mindset shifts that you would like to wanted to address or talk about?
Um,
Or even actually, yeah, go.
I think once you get to a place where, okay, I'm comfortable with real estate and all that, the next big shift that I think is important to do is, and I spoke about this a little while ago on my page and with a friend of ours, Adriana, it's really shifting your mindset from I'm a real estate investor to I'm in the business of doing real estate. And I think that mind shift is important for you to structure your real estate in a way that you need to, running it as a business, right? So I'm in the
Mhm.
business of doing real estate. That means you're going to put proper measures in place. You're going to have, like your accounting will make sense because you make sure that it's a real estate savvy accountant who understands that. Your lawyering makes sense because it's driven in helping your business grow. Your bookkeeping makes sense. Well, you
Mhm.
are now in the mindset of I'm operating a business. I need to figure out what's my place of genius. I need to delegate the rest. And in addition to that as well, I need to have on my team the proper people to make this business run effectively and also grow properly. So that shift is really important, I think, as well.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Especially I feel like in the GTA and probably in other areas too, where a lot of us think just appreciation, that cash flow doesn't exist and
Hmm.
that, you know, the prices are too inflated and it's just about appreciation. When you start like flipping to the other side and being like, this actually, like I need to make money because I like my business needs to grow and I need to, for example, like pay the employees or pay my expenses, whatever it is, to make sure is, yeah, that's definitely a very pivotal part to definitely be able to, yeah, run it as a business. I also am the same. I think it's very, very important to, I mean, if you're ready to get to that level, because some people like to just buy the properties and um, not really run it as a business.
Hmm.
And maybe those kind of people may not grow that big because I feel like once you start growing big is when you start also, or you start obviously thinking like, okay, now I need to like put measures into place, right?
Right. And I think at every stage, you start thinking about what makes sense from a business perspective at this stage. As you
Mm-hmm.
grow, obviously, there's a lot more that you need to plan properly. But even when you have a small portfolio, right? Clearly, you got into real estate because you type of financial, you know, I don't know, some extra money or some cash flow or some financial freedom. You got into it for a reason, whatever your reason may be. Well, make sure that whatever structure you have in place helps you get there. And if you don't have the knowledge how to do that, get the resource, and doesn't mean hire someone, but consult someone necessarily to be able to get you there, right? So every stage, there's a way for you to put a structure that makes sense with the level of the portfolio that you have.
100%. And so now, if you'd like to share your goal for the future, but also the goal of the future and what changes you think you're having to change in you now to achieve your new goals.
Oh, Diana, you and your deep questions.
I'm helping you plan out your next year, basically.
And I'm so big on vision boarding, and you know, I do these vision board every year and vision board workshops. It's coming up, it's not done yet, but I've definitely been thinking a lot about next year. You know, I have this philosophy, and my philosophy in life is, you know, you have two hands. One is to help yourself and one is to help others. And I try my best to make sure that providing security for self, whatever I can do to give back in some fashion or another to the community or whatnot. I think for a big thing for me for 2023, I want to have a bigger outlet in the real estate that somehow creates a bigger impact of giving back. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I think with the market that we're living in, with the changes that are coming in place, with what I know is the goal for, you know, having more immigrants and whatnot, I want to create some type of ecosystem in our real estate business that somehow creates a solution to that problem. I don't know exactly what it looks like beyond just helping here and there or helping people, maybe joint venture. There's something bigger, and I'm still conceptualizing it. So stay tuned.
Awesome. And so what kind of changes do you think you're going to have to make for that?
The one big change was really putting systems completely in place, right? Putting completely systems in place, which removes me a lot from the equation as well. And then it allows me to clear my mind and stay in my place of genius in our real estate business, where I'm not worried about, I'm not worried about the tenant. I'm not worried about this. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about the accounting, and the accountant is connected to the bookkeeper, connected to the lawyer. They can worry about themselves, right? They're operating in a way that makes sense, where I'm kind of removed from the equation. So I have not just the freedom of time, but a space as well where I can really stick to, okay, this is how I see it working. If I need to consult with what I need to consult with. And now adding it back in the business. We're big on creating like a Costco effect to our business. So my husband has a real estate license, so he's an agent. We have a property management firm. I'm big on the acquisition and off-market deals and growing the portfolio. So looking at that system, how do we create something in there that creates a lot more pools? Someone said something to me yesterday, Janie, who I met. She said, you know, we need to learn how to do more pools and less push. So how do I create that pool that gives back a lot more in the community is really what I'd like to include in our ecosystem. So I'm going to focus on that.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. It was so good to get to hear about your personal development journey and your mindset shifts.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Dan.
No problem. So if you guys love what you heard, feel free to follow Aki. And if you love to see the shows, feel free to add me. And so we'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye, Aki. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.